Sounddogs Audio Publishing is pleased to present the Doom Brigade. By Margaret, Weis and Perrin. This is Denis de Boisblanc. Stand to! Kang was on his feet, his clawed hands groping through the darkness of his cabin for his armor, before he was fully awake or cognizant of what was going on.
Blasted elves. Damn pointy ears. Why in the abyss can't they let a fella get some sleep?
He found his breastplate, wrestled with it briefly, and finally managed to sling one strap over his scaled arm. The other strap remained elusive, and Kang, cursing it soundly, ignored it. Clasping the breastplate to his chest with his arm, he searched for the door. A trumpet sounded the alarm off-key. More shouts came from the outside, answered by hoarse yells of defiance.
Floppy elves,
Kang muttered, but that didn't seem quite right. Something about dwarves, not elves. Kang flung open the door to his cabin. The breathlessly hot morning air hit him a good sock in the face. Kang blinked, shook his head muzzily, tried to disperse the dwarf spirits fouling his brain. Reaching out, he collared the first draconian that came into sight.
What the hell is going on? Kang bellowed. Is it the Golden General?
The draconian stared, lost in such amazement that he forgot to salute.
Golden General? Begging your pardon, sir, but we haven't fought the Golden General in 25 years. He's them pesky dwarves, sir, on a raiding party. I expect they're after the sheep, sir.
Kang considered this extraordinary news. Dwarves? Sheep? Raiding party? The part of him that knew what was going on was really incensed. If he could only... "Good morning, sir," came a damnably cheery voice. Icy water splashed into Kang's face. He gave a roar and emerged, scales clicking with the shock, but now relatively sober and aware of what was happening. It was Slith, Kang's second in command. "Dwarves again, huh?" Kang said. Draconians were dashing past, pulling on armor and hoisting weapons and heading to their assigned defense posts around the walled village. "Yes, sir. They're hitting us from the north." Kang ran for the northern side of the wall, a wall in which he took an inordinate pride. Made of stone that had been blasted by magic from the side of Mount Celebund. The wall had been built by Kang's troops, the former 1st Dragon Army Engineering Brigade. The wall surrounded the Draconians' village, kept the marauding dwarves out and the sheep in. At least, that's how it was supposed to work. Somehow or other, the sheep kept disappearing. When that happened, Kang could often smell the savory scent of roast mutton, borne on the night breeze, wafting from the direction of the hill dwarf settlement on the opposite side of the valley. Reaching the wall, Kang clambered up the stairs and took his place on the battlements. He spotted the hill dwarves running across the open ground, heading for the north base of the village wall. The lead runners carried ladders and ropes, ready to scale the walls. The Draconians manned the walls, swords and clubs drawn, waiting to knock some hill dwarf heads. "You know my orders," Kang shouted, drawing his sword. "Flatten the blades only. Make sure any magic you Boziks use is harmless, just enough to throw a scare into them." The Draconians around Kang all "yes, sir," but it seemed to him that their voices were distinctly lacking in enthusiasm. The dwarves had reached the bottom of the wall and were flinging up their grappling hooks and hoisting their ladders. Kang surveyed the field of battle. The dwarven ladder bearers had planted their ladders. The dwarves were climbing up them. The Draconians successfully pushed 4 of the ladders over, but several dwarves scrambled over the remaining 2 ladders, clubs in twist swinging. The dwarves were a tough target for the Draconians to hit. Standing about 4.5 feet tall, they ducked under the legs of the 7-foot-tall Draconians, whose clubs and sword blades generally whistled right over the dwarves' heads. Kang spotted 6 dwarves, who darted and weaved and jumped, eluding all attempts by the Draconians to stop them. The dwarves leapt off the wall and disappeared inside the Draconian village. "Damn," Kang swore. "Slith, take the first squadron and go after them. We can't afford to lose any more sheep. Go!" The Draconians had maintained their military ranks and organization over the years, though there had really been no need for them to do so. They had long ago left the army. But the discipline of the military unit worked well in times of emergency, such as this. Everyone knew what to do and then followed. The support troops supplied the rest of the brigade with food, clothing, armor, weapons, and tools. During the raids, the support troops served as the reserve army. Rog, the commander in charge of support, saluted as Kang approached. "We're ready when you are, sir," Rog announced. "Good. Let's go," Kang responded and set the example by sheathing his sword. With a yell, the 40 Draconians, each armed with a club and a shield, broke into a jog, heading to the gate. The Draconians manning the gate saw the support troop coming, flung wide the wooden doors. On the other side of the gate, the dwarves, seeing their chance, made a rush on the open portal. Kang and his support troop charged through the gate. Swinging clubs and fists, they surged headlong into the attacking dwarves. The battle was brief. Several dwarves fell, their heads cracked by a club or fist. Lightning crackled. A few bosuks were using their magic. Mindful of their commander's order, they made certain that all it did was singe a few beards and set one dwarf's pants ablaze. After 5 of their number had either fallen or were smoldering, the hill dwarves withdrew, leaving their wounded on the field. Their wives would be around to collect them and move. Kang called for his forces to retreat. The draconians on the wall let out a victory yell. Once again, they had pushed back the dwarves. 6 dwarves had made it through, however. Kang could only imagine what mischief they'd managed to do before being cornered. Kang ordered his men inside, and the gates closed. Slith was waiting for him. "Well," Kang asked, "did you catch them?" Slith saluted. "Sir, we clobbered 2 of them, but at least 4 got away, and 4 of the sheep are missing." "Damn! And nobody saw a thing? What did the sheep do, sprout wings and fly off with the dwarves on their back?" Slith could only shrug. "Sorry, sir." Kang sucked in a breath, tried to calm himself. "Deal with the wounded, then assemble the troops in 1 hour in the compound. I want to talk to them before it gets too hot." Slith laid a conciliatory claw on Kang's scaled arm. "The boys are having a rough time of it now, sir. But we're still all behind you. Every one of us." Kang nodded wordlessly, and Slith went off to carry out his orders. He and his soldiers hauled the unconscious dwarves outside the gate and left them there. The next day, they would either wake up and stumble home, or their families would haul them off.
"Damn crazy way to run a war, if you ask me,"
one draconian said to another as they hauled a dwarf out the front gate. Kang had his reasons for this damn crazy way to fight a war. Reasons he'd shared with the men under him time and again. They just needed another reminder. Soon all the draconians in Kang's command were standing in 4 rows. Kang took his place before them. Slith gave the order, and the draconians snapped to attention. A fiery red eyeball, the morning sun, peered into the compound. The red light glinted on the scales of the draconians, scales reflecting the type of dragon from which each was so hideously descended. Sunlight gleamed on the brassy-tinted scales of the Baz. Slith, one of the civics, glittered silver. Stepping from the shadow of the compound hut into the bright compound, Kang's own scales glinted with burnished bronze. He was a bozuk, one of the few bozuks in the troop, and for all he knew, perhaps one of the few bozuks left in the world. Lizard men was the term the humans used to derisively refer to draconians, an insult that never failed to make Kang's scales twitch. The draconians were much closer akin to their parents, dragons. The shortest draconians stand 6 feet tall. Kang himself was 7 feet in height. They walk upright on powerful haunches, their clawed feet needing no shoes or boots. Their clawed hands are adept at wielding the weapons of war. All draconians have wings that allow them to glide short distances and float through the air. The civics can actually fly. Draconians' eyes gleam red. Their long snouts are filled with sharp fangs. Draconians are blessed, or cursed, depending on how one viewed it, with the ability to wreak havoc on an enemy, even after death. When Kang himself died, his bones would explode, killing anyone in the immediate vicinity. Baz corpses turned to stone, encasing any weapon used to attack them, thereby rendering an enemy weaponless. A civic changed shape when he died, assuming the form of the person who killed him, making it appear that the slayer is the victim. Many an enemy army, seeing the field littered with what they mistakenly believed were their own dead, had fled the battle. Foremost, draconians are intelligent, which created a problem during the war, though many of the draconians proved to be far more intelligent than the humans who led them. Bozuks, like Kang, have an inborn talent for magic, similar to that possessed by their doomed parents. And though the draconians had been brought into the world with only one objective, to destroy any force that opposed them, the longer they remained in the world, the greater their need to be part of the world. Kang took a moment to regard his troops with pride, a pride that these days seemed always to be mingled with sorrow. Once there had been 6 rows of draconian soldiers lined up before their commander. Now they were down to 4. Every time he gave this speech, there were fewer to hear him. Kang lifted his voice. "You fought well today, men. Once again, we forced the enemy to retreat, while suffering no significant casualties." He made no mention of the lost sheep. "It has come to my attention, however, that some of you are dissatisfied with the way I've been running things around here. We're not in the army anymore. But we all agreed that our only hope for survival was to maintain our discipline. You chose me to be your commander, a responsibility I take seriously. Under my leadership, we've held on here for 25 years. Life hasn't been easy, but then life for us has never been easy. Yet we managed to build this. Kang gestured to the neat rows of cabins made of pine logs that stood inside the compound. This village of ours is the first settlement ever constructed by our people. The first, said a voice inside Kang, and the last. I want to remind you, he continued, his voice quiet, of the reasons why we left the army, why we came here. The troops stood still, not a scale clicked, no link of armor jingled. We, the 1st Dragon Army Engineers, have a proud history of service in the War of the Lance. We were commended for our meritorious actions by Lord Ariakas himself. We remained loyal to our Dark Queen, even during that terrible time in Uraka, when our leaders forgot their noble mission and instead turned on each other. Kang paused a moment to relive history. Think back on that time, men, and learn from it. Our armies had succeeded by a stroke of luck in capturing the so-called Golden General, the elf female who was leading the troops of the so-called forces of good. And what did our commanders do with her? Instead of just slitting her throat, as would have been the most sensible course of action, they put her on display for the Dark Queen's pleasure. And a group of her motley friends led by a bastard half-elf turned up to rescue her. In the fight for the crown of power, Lord Ariakas managed to get himself skewered. Some bloke with a green jewel in his chest impaled himself on a rock, and the temple collapsed, bringing her Dark Majesty's ambitions down with it. You all remember that time, Kang said, his voice hardening. We were ordered by our human commanders to fight to the death while they escaped. Many of our kind died that day. We chose not to obey. Some of us had foreseen this terrible end. As far as we were concerned, these human commanders had forfeited, by their stupidity and their greed, their right to lead us. We marched off, leaving the war to those who had bungled it. You elected me leader, and under my leadership we headed south, looking for a place to hide, a place to live. Evil turns in upon itself, or so the god-cursed Knights of Salamian say. But that is not true of the 1st Engineers. Kang spoke with growing pride. We fought hard as a cohesive unit for years. We were disciplined soldiers, accustomed to obeying orders, and we had a new ambition. We were sick of killing, sick of slaughter, sick of wanton destruction. We felt the urge to build, to settle, to leave something of ourselves behind on this world, something lasting and permanent. You recall that time, how we were pursued by the Knights. We headed for the Carolus Mountains, long a haven for exiles and outcasts. We reached it, finally, and found ourselves in the lands controlled by the dwarven kingdom of Thorvin. The Knights of Salamia weren't about to get themselves killed for what was now a dwarven cause. They left us for the dwarves to handle, and went back to celebrating their glorious victory. It might have gone badly for us, but our numbers were relatively few. We posed no threat to the heavily fortified underground kingdom of Thorvin, and so the Thorvin dwarves saw no reason to risk their lives chasing us down. We made camp in this valley, nestled in the foothills between Mount Celebund and Mount Dashanak. Our first objective, we built the wall. Our camp turned into a fortification. The fortification became a village. Kang sighed deeply. We have just one problem. We draconians are not farmers. Nothing we plant ever grows. No seed we sow ever bears fruit. He did not speak the rest. They all knew it. The futile attempts to make anything grow in the barren ground was a cruel metaphor of their own lives. They were born of magic. No female draconians existed. Their race would be the first and the last to feel Kryn's sun warm their scales. We would have perished of starvation long ago, Kang admitted, if it weren't for the Hill Dwarves. The Hill Dwarves village was located on the opposite face of the valley, on the side of Mount Celebund. During the winter, when game was scarce and the draconians were facing starvation, they did what was necessary for survival. They raided their neighbor's larder.